Good afternoon and welcome. I think the clock on the wall is a little slower than the official time, so let's go ahead and get started. As you know, the weatherman says it's not going to be windy, there's not much chance of fire, but we have to read the fire code nonetheless. In the event a fire alarm sounds, please remain in the auditorium and remain seated. Should there be a need to evacuate, a Springmore staff member will direct you on how to leave in an orderly fashion. Please remember not to use the elevators and to go to a red pole once you're outside. So glad you're all here. We welcome you and those who are on our closed circuit TV and the millions or so more who own other forms of TV. I'm sure they're listening in today as well. Brandon has a few comments and an introduction. So Brandon.
All right, good afternoon. How are y'all? Good. Glad to see everybody. Excited about the presentation today. It's all be new for me and exciting history for me to learn about, so I won't be long. I'm just going to say two quick things, and I'll introduce Jessica. We were at our, 5 of us were at our annual conference this past week. We get together with the other retirement communities in the state of North Carolina and go over different educational things and networking opportunities and meeting vendors. And it was a good conference. We learned a lot. I usually write about some interesting things that I learned or things we want to implement here at Springmore in one of my articles. I'll plan to do that hopefully next month. So it was a good conference and trying to bring back a lot of things that will be innovative, but not over the top. You know, want to kind of progress conservatively here, but kind of keep things going. So it's interesting to hear what other people are doing. So lastly, we're starting to work on our budget for 2024. I know that's really, really early, but we start early because we are obligated to give that to the Management Advisory Committee, which oversees it and approves it and meets with all the employees. And then we have to meet with the board, and it takes it's a long process to get the approval. It's actually longer for that part than actually kind of composing it, but I think it works very well. It's very transparent for the residents to see. So we're working on that, and we'll keep y'all updated as that moves along, but I feel good about the way that's going so far. So not too much to say today, which is kind of unusual, but I do want to introduce Jessica Pagan. She's our new healthcare administrator who took Carrie Corley's place after 24 years. So she's going to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about her, okay? All right, you have a great day.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Jessica Pagan. I'm the new administrator at the Stuart Health Center. I'm really honored to be here. Just a little bit about myself. I have 3 children. They are 7, 15, and 21. I actually have a background in social work. I started out in child and adult protective services before becoming a nursing home social worker. And then grew within the industry and became an administrator. I've been an administrator now for almost 8 years. My grandfather was actually a resident here from 2001 to about 2008. For those of you that may have known him, his name was Darwin Coburn. So here at Springmore was my first experience, I guess, with a continuing care retirement community. I fell in love from day one. I used to visit quite often, after church on Sundays mostly. But I knew when I moved to Raleigh about 2 years ago that if an opportunity ever came about that I wanted to have an opportunity to join the team. So I'm truly honored to be here. Many of you I've already met personally, and I'm looking forward to getting to know each and every one of you. I'm always available, very transparent, and you will see me out and about, and please feel free to stop by if you'd ever like to chat. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you and welcome to Springmore. Brad has a word for us. Brad is, as you know, assistant manager.
Hey, just very briefly wanted to update everyone. I put out in the resident memo, we put out an updated pet policy. I know that's been a big topic here recently, and just wanted to make sure everyone was aware. They saw that. If you have any questions or any concerns, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to answer those after this meeting. But yeah, just let me know if you have any questions. Give me a call at 7057, or you can send me an email. So thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Jim Epps, would you introduce our speaker for today?
No, sir, I will not.
Come on up and start, Tom.
I got an extra 10 minutes. Yeah. You go have the whole hour, buddy. How's everybody today? Are y'all doing well? Is anybody not doing well? We'll be glad to help you get to the clinic. No, I think we're okay. Well, good to see everybody here. I have a question to ask. I'm not sure how many good answers I'm going to get. How many of you folks here have been in the Y Guide or Y Princess program? Stand up. Okay, that's 3. And Jim Bundy also. Well, today we have a gentleman, Tom, how many years were you in the program and how many children?
2 children, what's that?
Oh, it could be 6 years, it could be 12.
6 to 8.
6 to 8, okay.
6 to 8.
Well, I'm sorry the rest of y'all didn't have the benefit of that program, but it's really a great program. Did I hear somebody say, Jim? Are we okay? Okay.
As long as you use the microphone.
Sir?
As long as you use the microphone.
John, I'll be glad to use the microphone. The lady who just came in, do you have a ticket? Did you get a, Alan, could you help? Raise your hand again, please, and let him see you. Over in the far corner. Okay. You need a ticket too? Here in Raleigh, not in the world. But yeah, it was this program that started in the year I was born, 1937. But I was the first person to have the program here in Raleigh. Thank you. She is such a wonderful. Anytime you want to say anything good about me, just raise your hand. Okay. It's my pleasure to introduce to you my friend and distinguished former Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs at the North Carolina State University. How many of you are related to the other institution, UNC? You can raise your hand. Okay, would somebody take them out immediately? Okay. Dr. Stafford has worked for NCSU for 41 years. He will speak to us today about the NC State University Memorial Bell Tower. Mostly, though, he'll be talking about the renovation of Reynolds Coliseum. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Tom Stafford.
Thank you very much. And, okay, you hit one of my slides. That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tom Stafford. I worked at NC State for 41 years, and I retired 11 years ago. Before I retired, a student came into my office one day, and he wanted to know if I could and if I would take his group inside the bell tower. I didn't even know there was a room on the inside, much less what was in the room. So I got him to come over, and I took him inside. And when I saw how excited they got to be inside the bell tower, they were taking pictures like crazy to prove that they had been inside the Memorial Bell Tower. I knew right then that there was a good opportunity here. That was 15 years ago. And since then, I've now done over 900 tours of the bell tower and over 200 tours of Reynolds Coliseum. Now, the Memorial Bell Tower is the most beautiful, the most iconic and the most sacred place on our campus. It was built by the alumni to honor their fellow alumni who died while they were in military service during World War I. It is a military memorial. Most of our students today don't know that, but please remember that it was built to honor those men who were in the military and who died during World War I. So the Bell Tower has been my most popular tour, but I've done over 200 tours now of Reynolds Coliseum. And what I want to focus on today is, for the most part, is Reynolds Coliseum. Now, I've done over 1,000 tours. That's a lot of groups. A lot of groups and a lot of people that I've taken on tour at NC State. But do you know what? Out of all those tours I've already done, over 1,000, I have never had a tour group that looks as good as this one. What do you think? Am I right or not? You know, there's always one person in every group that thinks that I tell every group what I just told you. Somebody in this group think that? Hey, look, maybe I do. Maybe I do, but every time I say it, it's the truth. And just remember, you'll be the best-looking group I've ever had until next Monday afternoon. Okay, Reynolds Coliseum, the most famous building not on the NC State campus, not in the city of Raleigh, but in the state of North Carolina. And I'm about to prove what I just said. What did Reynolds Coliseum look like in the summer of 1940? There it is. There was no building, of course, but that is the ground on which Reynolds Coliseum stands today. Back in 1940, it was just a big open field. And that summer, State College, that was our name back then, State College provided a week-long program on the campus called Farmers Week. And people from all over the state of North Carolina would come to the campus in Raleigh for this event. And they had scheduled a major event in a large outdoor arena that was going to be a part of that week-long program. And they were expecting several thousand people to attend that event. And what do you think happened on the day they had scheduled this program? It rained all day. And they had to cancel the event. And there were a lot of people who were really upset and disappointed. And several of them decided or thought that State College should have a large indoor arena so that the problem that they just experienced would no longer be the case. So they began a campaign to get support for a large indoor arena. And by the summer of 1942, they had gotten enough support to break ground for the building. And there they are, breaking ground on the NC State campus for Reynolds Coliseum. Let's see, Jim Bundy and Lee Salter and anybody else that I worked with at NC State, do you recognize that building in the background? That is Alexander Residence Hall. It was built just a few years before the Coliseum. So they broke ground in 1942, and by 1943, the building looked like that. And what do you think might have happened in the summer of 1943 when the building looked like that? They were told that the college was told that no more steel or building material would be available because we were right in the middle of World War II. So Reynolds Coliseum stood there just like that for 5 years. Nothing was done to it. Here's some pictures of the building during that time. This was taken from the inside looking north. The railroad track is right behind that person in the middle of the picture. There's a picture of the steel framework with Thompson Gymnasium over to the left. Thompson Gymnasium was the first standalone gym built on the NC State campus. Here is a baseball game just east of the steel framework. You can see it in the background. There's a parking lot on that site today. There's a really good picture of the steel framework up at the top. If you go all the way down to the bottom of that picture, that's Patterson Hall, the home for the College of Agriculture, and Hillsborough Street is just below that, just below the bottom of the picture. Now, something very important happened on the State College campus in 1946. The college hired a guy to be the basketball coach. And does anybody know the name Everett Case? If you've been around here for a while, you would probably know about this guy. He was hired to be the basketball coach in 1946. He had never coached in college. He had been a very successful high school coach in Indiana. He had won 3 or maybe 4 state championships in the state of Indiana. And he arrived on the State College campus in the summer of 1946. And what did he do after he got here? He recruited guys to play basketball at State College from North Carolina, from South Carolina, from Virginia. No. He recruited guys from Indiana and the Midwest. And guess what? They were a lot better basketball players from high school than the guys that were around North Carolina. And so after he began to do that, he began to beat everybody. He beat Wake Forest. He beat Duke, Carolina, and pretty much everybody else they played. And all of a sudden, the excitement and the interest in athletics on the State College campus changed from what? Football to basketball. Now, Everett Case brought some famous traditions when he came to Raleigh, and that picture shows you one of those. In the state of Indiana, at the high school level, they routinely would cut down the net when they won a championship. But at that time, no other college or university did that. And so where was the first place and the first time that a net was cut down from a college basketball championship? In Reynolds Coliseum, Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, how many schools use some version of that tradition today? Everybody does. And everybody who wins. That's a very good correction. So there was a very famous game that was scheduled in Frank Thompson Gym. I think it was against Duke. There was a lot of interest, and everybody tried to get a ticket. The gym was full. The students on the campus who couldn't get in through the front door crawled through windows. They even broke down some doors to get inside to see this game. The fire marshal heard about it. He came over and took one look, and he shut down the game. And there's a famous photograph that shows the front doors of Frank Thompson Gym with a big sign on it that says, "Game tonight canceled." Now, I mention that to illustrate how much excitement Everett Case generated for basketball on the NC State campus. Now, when the war was over and the college was ready to resume construction on the large indoor facility, Everett Case went over to the steel framework and he looked at it, and he knew that his team was going to play there when it was finished. And what do you think he said when he looked at that steel framework? Say it loud. He said, it's not big enough. Good job. And so he said, I want you to take both ends of that building and move them out like that. And when they resumed construction in 1948, that's exactly what they did. And that added 2,400 seats to the arena. Everett Case wanted to be absolutely certain that his gym, his arena, had more seats than that university over to the west, that dark blue school over there. Cameron Indoor Stadium had just been built a couple of years prior, and it would seat over 9,000 people. And, of course, they thought they had a great gym and a big gym, and Everett Case wanted to make sure that Reynolds was bigger than Cameron. So we ended up with 12,400 seats in Reynolds Coliseum. So here is a picture taken of the workers putting in the cornerstone as they began to complete the building. The cornerstone says 1949. You can see that cornerstone today if you go to the front doors of Reynolds and look over to the left. It's right there. Okay. They finished the building, and this picture was taken very shortly after the building was finished. Now, take a good look at that picture. And can you imagine what the students and the faculty and staff at State College felt when that building was finished, and they could take a photograph like that one right there and send that photograph to all their friends and say, hey, look what I got on my campus. When this building was finished, there was no other university or college anywhere in the Southeast that had a facility that large and that beautiful. Finished in the fall of 1949. Now, how did the name William Neal Reynolds get on this beautiful large building? Well, that is the correct answer. It has a little bit to do with money. The R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company up in Winston-Salem had 5 brothers on the corporate board for that company. And they all supported NC State. They would give money to the college to support faculty who were doing research in, what do you think? How about tobacco? And so that had been in place for a while. And when William Neal Reynolds' niece found out how much money he had given for this building, she got very upset. She didn't think he had given enough. And so she gave $100,000 of her own money, but in her uncle's name. And that's how his name got on the building. Now, you may wonder, how could $100,000 get your name on a building like that? Well, back when this was built, the total budget for the project was $300,000. I mean, it's unbelievable, but that's how his name got on the building. I think we should have put her name on it. I mean, it was her money. Well, anyway, now, what do you think was the first event in this brand new, beautiful building? And before I go to that, let me also point out that unlike what most people think, this building was not built just for basketball. A lot of people think that's the case. It was built to provide a large indoor arena on the State College campus in which a lot of special events could take place, and that you wouldn't have to worry about the weather. So it was not built just for basketball, but that is a major part of the building. So what do you think was the first event in the building in the fall of 1949? Circus is a good guess, but it's not quite correct. The first event was a basketball game. See, I tricked you by telling you that wasn't the The first event was a basketball game, and there's a picture of that game. It was December the 2nd, 1949. And the NC State Wolfpack played, they played Washington and Lee. And they beat them by about 20 points, 75 to 55. Now, why do you think Everett Case scheduled the first game in Reynolds Coliseum against Washington and Lee? Washington and Lee is a very good school. Very good, but they did not have a very good basketball team. And Everett Case wanted to be absolutely certain that he won the first game in Reynolds Coliseum. And there's the picture of that first game. Notice that haze up at the top of the arena. And what do you think that was? Back in 1949, almost everybody in North Carolina smoked. And after all, the building was a name for a guy from the R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company. So when you came into the arena for the game, you could light up right away. And most people did. And then the smoke would drift up to the top. I've talked to a lot of people who told me they had seats up at the top of the arena. And by the time it got to halftime, they couldn't even see the court. Can you imagine that today? Sitting in an arena for 2 hours? Okay, here's some more pictures of the early games. This is another Everett Case tradition that he brought to State College, introducing the starting lineup one at a time. They would run out to center court under a spotlight. Now, how many schools use some version of this concept today? Everybody does. Everybody has a little different twist to it, but everybody does an introduction like this. And it was started by Everett Case in Reynolds Coliseum. Now, let's see, I got a few more pictures. Still, you can see the haze up at the top. Now, here's a picture of the first women's basketball team at NC State. How long after the first game in Reynolds for the men did it take for the women's team to get on the court in Reynolds? It took 24 years. It was 1974 before the first women's team played in Reynolds, and I could not find a photograph of the first women's team in action in the Coliseum, but I did find a picture of the team outside. And there they are. Anybody know the name of the first coach? I love this name. His name was Peanut Doak. Peanut. And his brother, Chick Doak, is the guy whose name is on the baseball stadium at NC State. So there he is, Chick Doak. Peanut Doak and the first women's team. After that first year, our athletic director, Willis Casey, hired a new basketball coach for the women's team. And somebody in this room should know who that was. Kay Yao became our coach in 1974, I think, or maybe 5. And she became an NC State legend. She won over 700 games. She coached our women's Olympic team to a gold medal in '88. She's been inducted into every Hall of Fame there is. And her name is now today on the court in Reynolds Coliseum. She's an NC State legend. Okay. Now, I'm going to cover this history from this point on in categories. And the first category is basketball, because that's what most people think about when they think about Reynolds Coliseum. I've just pulled out a few of the highlights. I could talk about basketball in Reynolds all day. And by the way, how many of you in this room have ever attended a basketball game in Reynolds Coliseum? Look at that. More than one time. So you know what I'm talking about. Like I said, it was the largest arena in the Southeast when it opened, and we claim that more people saw basketball games in that arena than any other arena in the Southeast. The first 12 years of the ACC tournament were held in Reynolds Coliseum. And everybody knows what the ACC tournament is like today. The Dixie Classic was held in Reynolds Coliseum from the holiday season in 1949 up until about 1960. If you ever attended or if you know anything about the Dixie Classic, raise your hand. Okay, for those of you unfortunate others who don't know anything about the Dixie Classic, this was a holiday basketball tournament that was organized by Everett Case, and NC State, Carolina, Duke, and Wake Forest would play against 4 teams that Everett Case invited in from outside. Here's a slide that shows the program for 1953. You can see the 4 teams that came in from the outside. Now, this tournament was held in Reynolds Coliseum between Christmas and New Year's every year starting in 1949, and it very quickly became the biggest event in North Carolina. Now, I didn't say the biggest basketball event. It became the biggest event, the biggest social event, the biggest political event, yes, and the biggest basketball event as well. I mean, if you were in North Carolina and you were able to get tickets to the Dixie Classic, and you walked up to somebody and you could pull those tickets out and say, hey, look what I got. I mean, you couldn't do anything better than that. The people would just do anything to get tickets to this event. At the end, in the 1960s, in 1960, some of the basketball players from State College and from Carolina got involved with some gangster types from New York City who paid them money to fix the point spread on the games. They didn't fix the outcome of the game, but they did fix the point spread. And that's how you bet if you're going to bet on a basketball game. Well, they got caught. There was a big scandal, and Bill Friday shut down the Dixie Classic. And I know people to this day who have never forgiven Bill Friday for shutting down the Dixie Classic. I mean, I think it was the only option he really had. Okay, here's some more things about basketball. There have been other conference tournaments there. There have been a lot of NCAA tournaments. The women's ACC tournament was there in 79 and 82. The U.S. Olympic team prepared for the Olympics in Reynolds Coliseum in 1972. The Harlem Globetrotters have played there many times. There have been a lot of high school tournaments. There have been famous coaches, famous players, and famous games. The basketball tradition in Reynolds Coliseum is just absolutely extraordinary. Okay, today the men's basketball team at NC State does not play in Reynolds. They play in the PNC Arena out by the fairgrounds. But there are 5 university teams that still compete in Reynolds Coliseum. And here they are: women's volleyball, women's basketball, women's gymnastics, wrestling, and most people don't know that we have a rifle team, and they compete in Reynolds. The university has made a decision to discontinue the rifle team program. So that's going to be a historical picture right there. Okay, next category, the Friends of the College. If you've ever been to a Friends of the College concert in Reynolds Coliseum, raise your hand. I want to see everybody's hand up. If you've been around here for a little while and you don't know about the about the Friends of the College, you've been hiding under a basket. The concert series, and this was a classical music concert that brought into Reynolds Coliseum every year 7 world-renowned groups. Now, these were not local groups. These were performers from around the world. I mean, they were the best that you could get. And here they were coming into Reynolds Coliseum on the State College campus. Here is just a very small sample of some of the groups that came in. That's a picture of the Leningrad Philharmonic. Here's some more. The Vienna Symphony, Van Cliburn, Itzhak Perlman, the Metropolitan Opera performing Madame Butterfly, the New York Ballet. I thought I had some more. Anyway, that's just an illustration of the types of groups that would come in and perform in the Reynolds Coliseum. Now, this program went on for 32 years. And when you bought a ticket, you can only buy a season ticket to all the performances. And does anybody remember the slogan they used in the very early years? Anybody remember it? 7 for 7. You paid $7, which gave you access to 7 performances. And I know what I got.
I was there for that Leningrad concert. The conductor had not been properly warned at the railroad.
About the trains.
That noise came in, he was looking every direction. Trying to figure out where it's coming from.
That's a very good story. Thank you. Okay.
Story is Bob Hope. Bob Hope was there. And
Now, don't jump ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Okay, I'll shut up.
All right. I did have the wrong notes up here. Some more people in that category: Isaac Stern, Leontine Price, Leonard Bernstein. Now, why was this concert series so important to NC State? Here's why I think it was. Prior to the beginning of the Friends of the College, what do you think a lot of people called NC State College? Cal College. Now, do you think they called NC State Cal College after 30 years of that? No. I mean, I can remember standing at the front of Reynolds Coliseum right before a concert, and the buses would pull up, and they would come in from the eastern part of the state, the western part of the state, and the people got off those buses, and they were so excited to come inside Reynolds and see and hear Itzhak Perlman or one of these other groups. It really changed the culture, and it changed the perception that people from the outside had of NC State. Okay. Now, there were lots of other performers in addition to Friends of the College. Remember, that was a classical musical concert series. But there were other concerts, and I'm going to read off just a sample, a very small sample. And when I call out these names, if you have ever heard of or attended a concert by this person, then I want you to let me know. I want you to say, yeah. Are you ready? Come on, you can do better than that. Okay, here we go. Louis Armstrong. The Rolling Stones. Come on. Elton John. Andy Williams. Billy Joel. Peter, Paul, and Mary. Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers, The Fifth Dimensions, Stan Getz, Van Halen, Kingston Trio, Hank Williams Jr., and here he is, Bob Hope. Thank you. Bob Hope out at the airport being met by NC State students to be escorted into Reynolds Coliseum to perform. Were you there? Oh, you just know about it.
And another person is Burl Ives, and he was playing a song, and the train came through, and he just kept on playing, and he said, you know what? I like train songs. And he started singing.
Playing a train song. Okay, that's a good story, too. All right, how am I doing to convince you that this is the most famous building in North Carolina? Hey, look, I'm just getting warmed up. I'm just getting started. Let's take a category of famous people. Can you think of a category of famous people that I might want to use in my argument? How about presidents of the Rotary Club? Of the Kiwanis Club? How about presidents of the United States of America? Now, if you counted up all the presidents who had visited in the NC State campus, what do you think that number would be?
10?
Did I hear 14? It's about 14. Good job. Not many people get that one right. We've had a lot of presidents who've come to visit the campus, and 5 of those spoke in Reynolds Coliseum. Can you name any of them? I've heard 3 correct. That one was not. Here we go. John Kennedy spoke in Reynolds in September of 1960, just before he was elected president. LBJ came into Reynolds for a campaign speech in the fall of 1964. There's Lady Bird in front of him and a young Bill Friday to the left. And then that guy to the right, we don't know his name, but we know what his job is. Anybody that close to the president with that kind of a look on his face, we know he's in the Secret Service. Okay, Ronald Reagan. Anybody there when he spoke? You remember how hot it was?
I can't use that word in polite.
Thank you very much. It was over 100 degrees inside Reynolds. And when he got up to speak, he took off his jacket and he invited everybody in the audience to do the same thing. And when he finished his speech, there was not a dry spot anywhere on his shirt. And look at how they tried to keep him cool. That little fan underneath the podium, it didn't do one bit of good. Bill Clinton spoke after he left the White House in 2009. And then number 5, Barack Obama has spoken in Reynolds twice, 2008 and 2011. Now, that picture was taken when he spoke in 2011. And when he finished his speech, he announced to the audience that he wanted to speak to somebody in the audience. Somebody in the audience who could give him some good advice on what to do in the Middle East. Now, did you hear what I said? Did you hear what I said? Did you hear what I said? Who do you think that guy is speaking to the President of the United States? When he finished his speech, he left the podium and he worked the crowd on the rope. And I was right on the rope, right under the podium. And when he got to me, the university photographer snapped that picture just as we were eyeball to eyeball and shaking hands. And that's one of my favorite photographs from NC State.
What did you say, Tom?
I'm glad you asked that question. Somebody always asks me that question. If you've ever met the president in a situation like this, you know that the time between that you have with him at that occasion is probably about 15 seconds. So we introduced ourselves, and I thanked him, and he was gone. Okay, there have been some other famous people who've spoken in Reynolds. July 1966. Most people don't know that Martin Luther King Jr. spoke in Reynolds in the summer of 1966. Who's the most famous American architect of all time? Frank Lloyd Wright. There he is in Reynolds in the spring of 1950. The building had just opened, and the dean of our first college of design, Henry Kemp Hefner, Jim and Lee, remember that name? He's on the stage with our famous architect. Michelle Obama, Spiro Agnew. Hang on. This is Adlai Stevenson, former governor of Illinois. He ran against Dwight Eisenhower twice. He spoke in Reynolds in 1962. Here are two very famous people in Reynolds on the floor of the Coliseum. In 1983, they were joined together in holy matrimony by the Demon Deacon. I mean, you can't get much more famous than those three. Here's the slide for Spiro Agnew. He's not in the picture, and that's probably a good thing because shortly after he left Reynolds in his speech, he got into a little difficulty and he had to resign. And of course, his boss, Richard Nixon, had to resign as well after that. Let's see, Billy Graham. I mentioned Michelle Obama and Hillary Clinton. There have been a lot of famous people who have spoken in Reynolds. Now, the next category is events, noteworthy events. And the first one I would mention is a program that some of you may have even attended. When they finished the Coliseum, they installed equipment that could be used to freeze water on the floor of the Coliseum and create a large ice skating rink. And when they did that, they would invite groups in to perform. And one of those groups was the Icicles. And there's the program from their performance right there. You know, it cost all of 25 cents to buy that program. There's another picture. If you look at the columns, you will see the posters that advertise the Icicles. I remember going to those when I was much, much younger, and I always remember their name being the Ice Capades. That may ring more bells than Icicles. Here's a picture of the ice on the floor in Reynolds. And I have talked to people who told me they were students at State College during the 50s, and they would come over to Reynolds, pay 25 cents to rent a pair of skates, and go out on the ice and skate all over the floor. We got somebody who did that? We were all young at one time, but... Okay. Okay, thank you. Keep me on track. The Ringling Brothers and Barnum & Bailey Circus performed there. There have been all of NC State's commencements have taken place in Reynolds until we went outside to the football stadium. The installation of our chancellors, all of our convocations and big events, our celebrations, the North Carolina Science Olympiads program has been held in Reynolds. The governor's inaugural balls are almost always held in Reynolds. Now, the last category is the military. And remember, I told you that the bell tower was built to honor those who were in the military. Well, Reynolds Coliseum has been the home of our military training programs since the building opened. And I've got that, well, there's a picture of commencement that I mentioned just a moment ago. This was back in the 70s. Here is the first photograph that I was able to find of NC State students in a military uniform. And if you look down at the bottom, it's dated 1899. So we have been involved with training military leaders from the very beginning. And that's because we were created as a land-grant college. And the land-grant colleges were required to teach agriculture, mechanic arts, today we say engineering, and military science. So it's been a long and a proud part of our tradition. And Reynolds Coliseum has been the home for drill, military ceremonies, military balls, commissionings. Here is a picture of the Army cadets sitting on the floor of Reynolds Coliseum about to be commissioned as second lieutenants in the U.S. Army. I've tried to count them up. There are at least 100, but it's hard to get an exact count. Today, we graduate and commission about 15 per semester. These are pictures. This is an Army cadet in Reynolds, just been commissioned. These are Air Force cadets at an Air Force base in Florida. These are the Navy and the Marines in a classroom. And there's a picture of our number one all-time best military graduate, General Hugh Shelton, who graduated and was commissioned in 1963. He fought in Vietnam. He was later selected to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And that is the highest position that you can have in our military. And where was he trained and educated, prepared, and commissioned? In Reynolds Coliseum. Okay, these next pictures are kind of fun for students today. If you were enrolled at State in the 70s, this is how you would schedule your classes. Jim Bundy knows all about this, and Lisa Alter remembers it too. And then the next day you'd come back into Reynolds for Change Day. Thank goodness today we do it all on a mobile phone. And here's my last slide, another famous campus event, Camp Out for the good basketball tickets in Reynolds Coliseum. Reynolds was closed down in the spring of 2015, renovated and reopened in 2016. If you've not been back to see what it looks like after the renovation, you should come. It's absolutely beautiful. So I rest my case. Can you think of another building anywhere in North Carolina that would compete with Reynolds Coliseum? It's not because of the design of the building. Dorton Arena and the Biltmore House would probably be better in that category. But in terms of all the people and all the events that have taken place in that building, I believe it is the most famous building in North Carolina. Thank you very much.
Com, can you take a couple of questions?
Sure.
Anybody have a question you want to ask Tom?
Why did they stop having Friends of the College there?
Excuse me?
Why did they stop having Friends of the College concerts there?
Very good question. They stopped the Friends of the College concerts because the cost to bring in groups at that level had gone up and up and up. So in order to be able to pay groups at that level, the only option you had was to increase the price of the tickets. And it didn't work out. I mean, in order to bring those groups in, we had to charge so much money for the tickets that we decided that it wouldn't work. People wouldn't pay that much.
No, you're not. What year did it stop?
I've got it right here somewhere.
While he's looking, anybody else have a question? I can come to you. Okay.
It stopped in 1994.
That was a sad day, by the way.
It was indeed.
Yeah. You had such great programs. Yes, sir.
I don't have a question, but I got a comment. I used to have lunch with Leo Katkovic out at Edenton in my business career. Leo was a player for Everett Case, and Everett came from Indiana, where I went to high school and college, and there's a lot of interesting history about Everett.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Everett
sir.
Case, most people today don't understand or realize that Everett Case is the person who started all the crazy excitement about college basketball in the South. He's the person that started that.
One other question. Comment.
My husband and I had one of our early dates going to listen to Martin Luther King in July of 1966.
You were there?
We were there.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you for letting me know that. Most people don't even know about it, much less be there.
Tom, thank you so much for being here. Tom, I have a something for you, and I very neatly left it in my apartment. But I will get it to you if you're not rushed. Are you rushed? No. Okay, I'll get it to you. But Tom, thank you so much. That was very, very interesting, and this was not a biased NC State event at all, right? Was not meant to say anything about getting people to go to state.
Absolutely not.
Well, thank you again. Next month, which is June the 12th, our program will be a presentation by the Endowment Committee. Would you like to say anything, Madam Chairman? Okay, Madam Chairman would not like to say anything, but please come and learn a lot more about the endowment program for Springmore. Very unique and interesting program that we're very lucky to have. Thank you.
We have a drawing for the door prizes.
Let me get him to.
Let you draw a ticket for us.
Sure.
And the number is 027031.
All right. Who said that?
Okay.
Congratulations. One more.
Seven 266.
Let's give a hand to the two people who just won. There is one thing that goes with this. You have to share this with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Very enjoyable. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you around the campus. We're adjourned.